What we're going to discuss today is how you'd better have your best speech or elevator pitch. If someone is asking you, tell me about yourself, the best impression that you can make, how would it be, do's and don'ts. The first step is the video that I'm going to let you watch. And when you watch, make sure that you take notes. After watching the video, we're going to discuss the details and the takeaway of the video, how you create the first impression. If someone is asking you, tell me about yourself. This lesson will help you to be successful in an interview, in any kind of interview, if you're applying for university courses or job interviews. Take notes before anything else and make sure that you take the key elements. I might pause in between the videos to explain the details. More than welcome to send me your questions in the chat box. I'd be happy to address.
How long does it take to make a first impression? 3 seconds? 2? Maybe just 1 single second? Well, whichever one you guessed, you are absolutely right. In fact, studies show that even when researchers cut the time down to a half second, people can still decide if they like and trust a person in an impossibly tight time frame. But just about everyone gets tense when they're asked, tell me a little bit about yourself type of question. You may worry you sound mechanical, forgetting important information, or you're bragging too much about yourself.
So it is important that you take notes, because after this, we're going to have a formative quiz that you're going to discuss the questions. And after the break time, when you come back, I'm going to put you in a breakout room. We're going to discuss in how you create and you have your elevator pitch. So it is important to be able to discuss about yourself, discuss the importance and your power. It is very important for you to know what kind of information you should share with the person and what kind of information you need to elaborate a little bit on. It's not only the degrees that you have or the successful stories. It's very much the same as communicating with your audience in a more successful way to make a good impression. Once again, for the benefit of the students who just joined the class, Selena, hi. I'd like to emphasize in this session, because it is important for you to learn how you can make a good impression. If someone is asking you, tell me about yourself. What are the important information that you need to share and how you need to deliver that kind of message. This video is very short. When you listen and watch this video, you take notes, and then I'm going to give you the post assignment. So our session today is going to be divided into 2 different parts. The first part, you're going to learn about talking about yourself and making good impression in any kind of interview or encounter that you have with your friends, with your peer, with your university interviews or job interviews if you're applying for. In the second part of the class, I'm going to run through editing and proofreading and do's and don'ts. What are the importances of editing and proofreading? Continue.
Truth is that all of this is likely to happen, and you'll continue to struggle unless you learn how to break down and then rebuild your personal pitch. In this course, you'll go over the 2 dimensions you can change right now to make that perfect elevator pitch. They have to do with social cognition, the dimensions that influence how people who meet us process the information they get from us.
So you might say, okay, so it's not very important, but it is. When you make an impression, it is very important that the truth of not only what you know is how you present your kind of information, communication in your writing, as well as your verbal impression. Liana and Gordon, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Welcome. Okay, so we're talking about how to make a great impression and how to express who you are in the proper way. Take notes when you watch this short video, and then we're going to take it from there.
Warmth and competence, essentially other people's impressions of us.
So basically, when you're having your presentation or when you're trying to impress someone, you don't need to be mechanical. So the first word is warmth. So just try to communicate not in a mechanical way, and make sure that anything that you share with your audience basically is a very comfortable and very confident way of speaking. So it is important if we have like an interview, or if we are meeting with the audience, with another group that we never met before, your body language is important. So your body language is covering 87% of how you communicate. In this case, because most of us are just connected online, maybe the body language is somewhat missing. Make sure you have your cameras on, or even when you're on the phone, remember something: when you're talking to someone on the phone, you specifically, if you smile, you sound different. So the warmth and the competency are both designed to make your elevator pitch or the first impression authentic.
Warmth has to do with the "do I like you" decision. In its most primal form, it reduces it down to the question, are you a friend or are you an enemy? But beyond that, there are additional questions. Can I trust you? Do I feel safe around you? Competence comes down to the "can I rely on you" decision. From a brief elevator interaction, someone must decide whether you will follow through on what you promise, and if you're the type of person who can get things done. I know what you're thinking. How is this possible? And how is it fair? If someone who meets me at a conference and asks me to tell them about myself and then makes up their mind within seconds, do I even stand a chance? The answer is yes. If you are aware of and you manage your warmth and competence, you'll positively influence how others perceive you. I am Tatiana Kolavu. I'm a professor in business communication, an executive communication coach, and a longtime LinkedIn learning author. Crafting the personal pitch, perfecting the answer to the "tell me a little bit about you" question.
So the question is simple, as you can see. If I ask you a question, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where do you begin? What do you cover in your elevator pitch, in your short pitch? So it is important to cover and to add up only important information. And the way that you deliver is not only what you say, is how you deliver it.
And building it all in the right verbals and nonverbals will make you shine. Let's get started. Developing a personal pitch can be overwhelming. Building in warmth and confidence might sound great, but you would ask me, where do I begin? So to kick things off, let's see things in action. I've invited Jesse. He's an MBA student, a master's in business administration, and he's hoping to switch careers. He wants to move away from being an engineer in his current job and into operations management.
So pay attention to the differences of the way that Jesse is presenting and expressing his elevator pitch and saying that who he is, the first version and the second version, and what are the differences. I'm going to ask you a question by pausing this video.
In this conference that we're working on, he is preparing to talk to people in the agricultural equipment business, and he needs to prepare his pitch. Jesse, come on in.
Hey.
So thank you so much for being here. So what I'd like you to do is, you have the pitch that you would say based on your resume and what you know. So look in the camera and pretend that I'm the recruiter from AgroMax. So I'm going to ask you, tell me a little bit about you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I graduated from Grant State University with a degree in chemical engineering. I then spent 7 years working in the medical device industry. I don't know if you're familiar with Orthofix, but by the time that I left there, I was actually the lead product designer. Currently, I'm in MBA school. I'm trying to pivot into operations, which I feel like is a better fit for me. I feel like I can really leverage my knowledge of both engineering and design, especially when it comes to big machines like the ones that you produce. Oh, I'm also Six Sigma certified, which is a very intense and interesting process that you probably already know about. What do you do?
Okay, so tell me exactly, how do you feel if you were supposed to hire him? Would you do that? Sigma. He doesn't have a Sigma. He said that he was graduate and he has a certificate. Gordon. But my question is, when you listen to this pitch, to Jesse's pitch, what do you think? Do you hire him? You would not hire him, Nelwyn. Why is that? Can you explain why?
He just sounds very unsure of himself.
Very good. Yes, exactly. So he was extremely nervous and stiff. His sentences were short. He was not coming across as a confident and knowledgeable person, even though that he has different degrees, as he mentioned, right? It's not only the certificates or the degrees that we all have, right? It comes across as how I present the knowledge and the experiences that I have. We're going to continue.
Great. So they definitely know your education. They know your information as far as your certifications. Do you have anything more to add? How do you make this more personable? You seemed a little...
So the key word is make it more personable, meaning like, how can you communicate with people's heart rather than just in business? So many people are certified, but they're not necessarily coming across and being hired in that case, right? So your pitch should be personal.
Held back.
Okay.
So can we do a few exercises? Because I don't want you to sound like your resume. I want to come up with their agricultural equipment. So how can we get you to speak a little bit to that?
Basically, whatever that on the other end or your audience is expecting you to hear, you need to do a little bit of a due diligence and do your research and figure out what your audience needs to know and what can I bring to the table? Because to be hired is more than just being hired and working for someone or studying in a new school. To be hired is basically working within the team. Is this your team? Is the culture your culture? How much do you know about that specific ambience? And it is very important to show that your knowledge is matching in parallel with the company that you're applying for.
Let's work a little bit together and then we'll have you do another try.
This is exactly what you need to do when you have university interviews. At university, when you're applying for any kind of university, they will have an interview with you and you need to basically have this successful pitch to show that you're a good fit for that university.
Fantastic.
Okay, sounds great.
Cool.
Could be in writing as your letter of intent, could be as the presentation marketing pitch. In both cases, you're communicating and you need to be personable.
Jesse and I worked through the practical strategies that I'll share with you in this course. We developed a story that was relevant to this audience and it helps him open up his warmth and demonstrate his competence. He feels more confident about what he will be saying. He's going to try his pitch again, and I want you to look for what has changed. Remember, he's responding to the same question. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
This is the most difficult question if you want to answer. You need to jot down your notes. You need to be ready to share a story that story belongs to you. It's not only the story that everyone can share. That's how you can make it personal. Listen to his second version and tell me if you hire him, if so, why and why not?
All right, so we've got some plans. So we want to see this in action again. Look back into the camera. Agrimax, I'm the recruiter. Tell me a little bit about you.
Okay. I grew up on a farm in Iowa. From a very young age, my grandpa had me on the tractor riding on his lap. By the time that I was in high school, my dad had taught me how to drive a combine. And every summer, every July, we would be out in the field harvesting the wheat together. I think those memories really led to my love of machinery and just how things work. That also led me to go into engineering school. I graduated from Grant State University. I then worked...
You see how smoothly by telling that anecdote, he's saying that I have that passion and that passion drove me and led me to that success at engineering school to begin with.
For 7 years in the medical device industry, which while I was there, I made sure to take advantage of every Six Sigma opportunity, every leadership seminar that I could. And today I am in MBA school. I'm changing my focus into operations, which is so great because it lets me kind of feed the analytical part of my mind while also focusing on the process of building up a business.
So he's doing something in here. He says what kind of degrees he has. At the same time, he has how that degree will come to effect and will make that specific job that he's planning to do more productive and being a good match for that company. So it's not only the degrees and listing the degrees or the credentials that he has, is how effectively he can use those kind of degrees within the job market. Is exactly the same if you're applying for any kind of university, and that pitch, marketing pitch, as well as your letter of intent, you should say, based on these experiences, this is what I know, this is what I practice, and this is my passion for this specific job.
So that's a little bit about me. Tell me about you. How do you like working for Agramax?
So I'm going to open the chat box, and this time I want you to tell me, would you hire the second version of Jesse, and why? You can unmute yourself to discuss. You can write down your answers within the chat box. If your microphone is not working, Sophia, I noticed that you've had some challenges at the beginning of the session. Would you hire the second version of Jesse, and why? You would hire him. He sounds confident. Very good, Angela. That's right. Yeah, he sounds himself, right? So he was very laid back and very relaxed this time, and he was not listing. Thank you, Justin. Yes, absolutely. He has more confidence. He displays more confidence. He's educated, obviously, but this time he didn't list his education only. Gordon is saying that I would probably hire the second because I know a little bit of background info. Very good, yes. So this is the meaning of the personable, because he shared that story with his grandfather and riding on the tractor, and then he learned about machinery and how his knowledge of machinery led him to go to engineering school and so on. So it is very important to show not only your degrees, but how your degrees are relevant to the job that you're planning to apply for.
If I was working for Agramax and I heard that introduction, I'd say, you are hired.
Thank
Come
you.
on campus, seriously. How did this feel to do?
It felt so much better, so much more natural, and like the personal connection I feel like can set me apart.
Exactly. I remember you and Grandpa on the tractor. You're still talking about your accomplishments. I can look at your resume, but this is so much better. So I'm so glad we worked on this. Wonderful.
Thank you.
So this is exactly what we're talking about.
So make sure that you're taking notes. We're going to do the formative quiz. When you learn, we do quizzes and you answer the questions within the chat box. After we're done, I'd like to encourage each one of you guys to prepare your marketing pitch and then present it to the class after the break.
In this course, taking warmth and competence and strategically enhancing your personal pitch, your winning and authentic personal pitch.
So what we're going to do now, we're going to do a little bit of a quiz in here. So the first question is asking you, Ben wants to work on improving his first impression with others. Which two social cognition dimensions should he address in order to see improvements right away? Positiveness and trust, congeniality and influence, knowledge and expertise, warmth and competence. I keep the chat box open. I can see 2 answers are coming. Make sure that everybody answers this question. Read the question carefully, scan the answer choices. Positiveness and yes, the warmth and the competencies. Yes, Gordon, it is a multiple choice. That's right. Only one answer is correct. That's right. Yes. That's correct. Warmth and competence is absolutely important. Is not only the positiveness and trust, because his first version, he was positive and trustworthy enough when he talked about his degrees and credentials, but that is not enough. He shows that his degrees will come to effect and make it personable. Like, it was sweet of him of saying that anecdote about his grandfather and so on. So people can relate to personal stories. I'm sure that many of you guys have heard the stories of Bill Gates, who started his own empire business in his home garage from a very, very small ambience and so on. So you need to have that anecdote that is personally yours. I cannot have a copy of that anecdote because it is specifically yours, and that's how you can make it personal. So in order to be more successful in your marketing pitch, you need to have that warmth and competency. Next question is asking you, you're working on your elevator pitch and using story approach. Your story is your story. That's the beauty of that. That's how you can come across as someone who with competency, who is comfortable, confident, but successful and different by saying that different versions of the anecdote. So what is most likely the outcome? It will present a business connection. It'll be relevant to you. It'll read like a resume. Not sure if that is acceptable. It'll convey warmth and competence. I'm waiting for your answers within the chat box. You can give me the letters either, or you can type the. So read the question once again. You're working on your pitch and you're using this story approach. So the anecdote that you provide, what is most likely outcome? The story that you provide, what happens when you share an anecdote? I'd like to encourage everybody to participate. Justin, Sophie, Nelwyn, Selena, Gordon, Liana. Thank you, Angela. It will be relevant to you, but if you make it, I suggest you read the question again. The question is, what is most likely the outcome? It is asking about the outcome. Why do we share this story? The story that I'm sharing specifically, very good, Selena and Sophie, thank you. It'll convey warmth and competence. Very good. Thank you, Nelvin. Thank you, Justin. Yes, absolutely. Because when I share my personal story, it shows that I am interested, passionate, and I know more than just the degrees at universities and so on. The next question is asking, okay. These two questions for now. What I want you to do now, I want you to watch the next part of the video. It is short as well. In this case, you're going to learn about how you can show and display competence in your verbal communication. Take notes, please.
Demonstrating that you're trustworthy when you first meet someone is critical. Like with warmth, some of the trustworthiness is carried both in verbal and nonverbal signals. Let's take a look on how you can sharpen your verbals or what you say when you're talking about yourself. Be focused. Help your listener package your information in a memorable way.
Make sure you're taking notes because soon after the break time, you're going to prepare your own elevator pitch. Be focused. So that anecdote that you pick from your memory is only yours. So that focus will give you the benefit of choosing the selective one, like the specific memory or a specific anecdote that is related to you and the university that you're applying for, or the course that you're applying for, or the job that you're applying for.
Choose one or two words that describe you and communicate that. I often call myself an academic immigrant since I came to the US for college. Are you the curious techie who loves solving problems?
Knowing yourself will take a lot of time, a long time actually. So you need to take notes and rely on those two words as a compound noun to describe yourself.
Or the psychology junkie who enjoys studying human behavior? Be concise. Make your personal background memorable by tightening your verbiage and cutting out the babbling.
So he told Jesse, talked about that story with his grandfather, but it was not a long story. It was just short and sweet to make sure that the audience is interested in him before he sells his competency.
It's one thing to say, I grew up in India in a small town where my parents were school teachers and my uncle owned a TV repair shop, blah, 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 versus saying, I grew up in India and started tinkering with electronics when I was 6.
That's it. So concise language is a key after being focused and being selective.
Be credible. There are a couple of ways to do this. Now, evidence or specific details will help you strengthen an important point. Why not use this in your personal pitch? For example, you could say, I attended a small liberal arts college.
Trust yourself and any kind of training that you've had so far, any kind of specific school that you've attended that you think that you are standing above and beyond other students. So you need to realize that how it can be different.
But it's better to be more specific. You can say, I attended Bates College in Eastern Maine, a top 20 US liberal arts school. Notice how now this immediately gives you more credibility to you and your education. And let's talk about uptalk, the question mark at the end of sentences we sometimes use to sound more relational. Don't do it. Asking a question makes you sound unsure. Instead, keep your tone flat at the end of the sentence, and you'll come across as the competent professional you are.
The tone is extremely important, and it should be selected intelligently. So keep it flat. Don't raise it. That sounds a little bit arrogant. Avoid doing that.
Be a humble bragger. If you know your audience, it's to your advantage to brag a little bit about yourself.
But in a humble way.
The company's senior director at a coffee shop. He recognizes you and asks about you. Why not say, I've been in operations for 3 years and I absolutely love it. We get to redesign some of the system processes that come across your desk. In fact, the one you recently presented to the board had my fingerprints all over it. Notice how this brag relates back to the director. Be relational. Use words such as you and me whenever you can. Also, adding open-ended questions at the end of your pitch can engage your audience and connect your topic back to them. Back to the senior director example, you can finish your pitch by saying, how do you see operations contributing to the new strategic plan? And finally, be clear.
So I pause in here for you to review. Be focused, be concise, sound credible. So your story and my story must be different. There's no one story for all. Brag, but in a humble way. Make sure your tone is flat at the end of your sentences. Be rational and be clear.
Crisp articulation of words, an enthusiastic tone of voice, and a confident pace will help make your personal pitch more competent. So
when you smile, you sound different. Pause when you need to do so. It is very important not to have a fast pace. The speakers on this planet, they never speak fast. Be confident and be clear.
The key is balancing excitement with pace. If your pace is too fast, there are phone applications to help you reach an optimal pace of about 150 words per minute.
So you must have 150 words per minute in order to have a confident elevator pitch or marketing pitch. 150 words per minute, not faster than that. And is not too slow when you're reading, for example.
Some of these apps also provide feedback on mumbled words. Clear out the ums, you knows, likes, and any other fillers from your speech.
So avoid having that gap. If you notice, like Jesse at the beginning of his presentation or elevator pitch, he was pausing a lot. His sentences were short. He was having some gaps, like tic-tac sentences. Avoid doing that when you're having your presentation or elevator pitch.
Replace them with confident pauses. And consider this, non-native English speakers like me have to be especially mindful of intonation. Many of my students say product versus product, or forecast versus forecast. You don't want your audience to be confused as a result of a different intonation. Practice the preferred way to pronounce and flex to that.
And if you're not sure about the pronunciation, check the intonation and pitch and tone.
The way you communicate your personal pitch will directly relate to how capable and knowledgeable the other person perceives you to be. So you have to be sure to practice.
Okay, any questions so far? I keep the chat box open. We're gonna also learn about how you should be also aware of non-verbal communication.
When you first meet someone, it might be hard to demonstrate how competent and capable they are by delineating between just the verbals and nonverbals. To help you hone your message, let's go over nonverbals that you can work on to clearly communicate competence. First up, confident stance. Do you remember your parents telling you to stand up straight so they know that you were actually paying attention? Let's add it to the nonverbal list of your personal pitch. Own the room when you walk in. Stride in and stand like you've been there hundreds of times. Keep your head centered and straight, your shoulders drawn back and relaxed, your arms relaxed by your sides, your feet positioned towards your listener. If you're seated at a table or behind the camera, the same principles apply. Sit tall, a few inches away from the back of your chair. This position engages your core stabilizing muscles and keeps you from slumping. It also allows you to lean into the table or towards a camera to signal interest or add emphasis while you speak. Presence. Whether you're presenting yourself in person or representing yourself in writing, the details matter.
So it is important because when you're applying for universities, you might need to have that letter of intent in writing. When you're having that presentation, like in 2 minutes or a number of the minutes, that's fine. Anywhere that you go with that marketing pitch, you need to have that focus in details.
Write clearly with proper grammar and dress with attention to detail. Details like well-fitting and wrinkle-free clothing, pleasing patterns or color combinations, shine shoes, and well-kept office bags will all be noticed. Comfortable gestures. Gestures accentuate your message by directing the listener to what's important. Competent ones are intentional without becoming too sharp or mechanical. Simple finger counting, distance demonstrating, or timeline pointing are appropriate. If you're sitting at a table or in front of your computer, keep your elbows at the table and sit far enough from your camera so that your hands are fully visible when you gesture. If you typically use gestures in day in and day out conversation and you're on the phone with a recruiter or potential employer, keep gesturing because it also will change the emphasis in your voice. Adaptable eye contact. A sophisticated communicator knows when and where to adapt their eye contact. For example, using less direct and extended eye contact when in a country where it's perceived as a sign of disrespect. That's a good example. Or a situation where you're talking to two people and one of them asks you to share something about yourself. In this case, you need to direct your attention to include both individuals. Vocal energy. Don't forget to modulate your cadence, rhythm of speech, and overall energy of your messages. Even the most interesting material can become boring when presented by a monotone